the idea of kind of unplugging it from all of the news and all the activities, and then consciously take that plug and plug it into the positive things, the positive sources of energy to say, this is who I am. This is who I want to be.
Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle. I hope today's episode will lift your spirits a bit. I think we all could use that right now in the wake of the attack on our U.S. Capitol and so many other things that are going on in our country right now. My guest is James Brown, the Chief Encouragement Officer of a company called Encouragex. I first interviewed James a couple of years ago when the company was just launching, and it is now really taking off. And I just wanted to talk to him again as the new year is beginning, because I think it's important that we find a way to connect with each other in ways that we've not been doing a good job of recently. And the whole idea behind the Encouragex platform is to give all of us the language and the tools that we need in order to communicate in a positive and encouraging manner, regardless of the relationship and regardless of the situation that we might find ourselves in. So I hope that you will enjoy this conversation. I know I really did. And hopefully you will feel encouraged and you will pass that along as you go about the rest of this year. So without further ado, here's my conversation with James Brown. So James, it's always great to have a chance to talk to you. But I've got to tell you, I've got to be completely honest. I almost called you this morning to cancel because, because I'm really struggling right now with everything that's going on in the country. And the last couple of days, I've been really down, and it's been very hard for me to focus on work. And I know I'm not alone. I'm only sharing this because of the topic that we're discussing. So this morning I slept in because all I really wanted to do was just keep the covers over my head. And when I finally got up, my sweet husband, Lou, as you know, came to me, and he came to check on me to see, how I was doing. And I burst into tears. And I just said, I'm so sad. And he said, I know, baby, I know. He said, but it's going to be okay. We're all going to get through this. And so in that moment, as he was encouraging me, I said, okay, I have to do this podcast today. I am not going to call James and cancel. I'm going to soldier through. And so this podcast is as much for me as it is for those of you who are out there watching and listening, because I know I'm not the only one feeling this way.
Yeah. And
I think we all need not a little, but a lot of encouragement. So thank you for, first of all, for being you, for being my friend, for creating a platform that allows and helps people find the language and the tools to encourage people on a regular basis. So I'm going to stop there and let you just kind of jump in.
Yeah, well, I'll say this: blessings for your friendship. I think that, as we look on the horizon, there are clearly thousands of reasons for us to feel like we want to throw in the towel. To give up on past relationships, to shut ourselves off from future relationships. And I will tell you that as I started looking at my relationship dashboard of all the people that I've been encouraging, over the last couple of years as we've been bringing our platform to life, it's amazing where I've spent the time being intentional about encouraging people, the leveling up of that relationship I'll say it this way, with my friends that happen to be white, with my friends that happen to be African-American, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, whatever they associate with as far as their groupings, that ability to be intentional with them to say, hey, thank you for your friendship, and let's keep talking about things, most of which have nothing to do with those associations, allow us to realize that, gosh, I think the first step we have to do is really unplug ourselves from the secular world a bit. Mm. I mean, I actually think of myself as having a tail now. It has like an electrical plug-in, like an AC plug. And I consciously go through the idea of kind of unplugging it from all of the news and all the activities, and then consciously take that plug and plug it into the positive things, the positive sources of energy to say, this is who I am. This is who I want to be. And unless I actually go through the exercise of kind of looking at my tail, kind of like your cat. I met your cat the other day when I stopped by for a meeting. Unplug that tail and say, let me plug it in, because there's all these voices that are just begging us to stay plugged in, to get the likes and the counts and all those things that honestly is kind of a new phenomena, right?
Well, and not only that, but right now, as far as social media goes, it's a complete cesspool right now for the most part. It is so difficult I mean, I've had to unplug myself from a lot of it. Every once in a while I'll look and just kind of, I'll get a notification or something, and from somebody that I follow, and I'll look and see. And then before you know it, I'm down that rabbit hole. Yeah. And, and just the back and the forth and the vitriol and the hate and the anger and it's too much. It's too much. So let's explain to people who are finding out about Encouragex for the first time, what it is. And I'm going to do it since I'm a partner in this, full disclosure for people who are listening and watching. James created the platform, and I am now involved as part of the company and have my own collection. And basically, so what people can do is they can go to encouragex.com and they can find language and tools to consistently encourage people in their lives with authentic language. You can do it consistently. You can do it regularly. You can do it. And relationships can be any relationship. It can be a marriage, a friendship, a working relationship. And it's pretty phenomenal. And since we did our first interview right when you were launching, the company has it's exploding. It's really taking off.
Yeah, it's been quite auspicious in many ways. I feel like Noah building an ark, 4 years ago, with the promise that at some point it was going to start raining really hard. I didn't think it was going to be this. No one could have imagined we'd be in this moment. And to take it one step further, I think what's pretty amazing about what we're doing and some of the testimonials that are coming through, both from our business to business and now the direct to consumer experiences with platforms like the Linda Lorelle Our Voices Matter collection, people are saying, look, this is helping me to save my marriage. I got that note the other day.
I saw your post on LinkedIn this morning about that.
Yeah, actually a high school friend of mine sent me a note saying, you may not realize I'm on platform. I started looking at some of the things about divorce proofing my marriage. I thought, well, I'm not sure where we're at. The COVID stuff has been, pretty heavy I was used to spending, a couple hours a day with my significant other.
And now it's like 24/7.
10 hours is too much, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, like, how do we manage this, and start reading some of the content there, and just start, doing one or two a week, and realize that it started to it started to unlock not only my kindness, but also my spouse's kindness when we started realizing, man, some of the missives that we sent to each other when we started dating, were these things that we had kind of in a shoebox. And now with this platform, we have this kind of digital shoebox of things that, man, we could think about how to be kind to one another all day and twice on Sunday. But with the platform, it helps me to easily kind of help me to translate some of these thoughts, because I'm not a poet, right? But man, when I see something that I would love to say, it just gives me permission, which just knocks me over, right? It really goes back to why I started the whole platform. I always felt that my parents had good intentions, but they just didn't have the words, Linda. They didn't, for them, they were very transactional. Like, you got food, you got a roof over your head, right? You got clothes on your back. What else do you want from me?
What else do you want from me, right?
Yeah, because for them, that was leveling up the relationships that they had with their parents, growing up. And, you look back on kind of how things have evolved. We really want to get out of just the transactional kind of lower level Maslow safety and security considerations and really get into the more transformational experiences, things that help you to transform not only the relationship, but also the person, so that you can create a happy, healthy, and more resilient relationship. It really is the thing that, as human beings, really separates us from the other animals that are walking the earth.
When I think about you and your parents, there's so many parents out there. We're all doing the best we can. We're doing the best we can, and we are products of how we grew up, and our parents are products of how they grew up, and et cetera, et cetera. And so what is it, when you know better, you do better, right? And so when you have the help, if there is not a person, in this case, it's a platform that can help you find the words, help you understand what you might want to say, and conversely, what you might not want to say to make the person feel less than. It's like, if you don't know what you don't know.
Well,
so, this is such a gift.
Well, you think about learning algebra. No one's expecting you to know algebra until you get a little training, a little instruction, a little practice, right? Not just one time, but like you're doing a series of practice to kind of, how does this all work? Becomes a working knowledge. Gosh, think about the idea. Has anyone ever taught you how to apologize? That's an important skill set, right? Because most of us grow up feeling like to apologize is to submit, to lose, to give in, right?
I'm wrong, you're right. Yeah.
When in fact, it really is the gateway to creating a situation where you have resiliency. If you know that in a relationship, there's a high probability that if someone does something wrong, they're going to apologize. Well, gosh, now you can get into the Brene Brown experience of maybe being vulnerable, right? But if you feel like that person,
you are totally reading my mind. Well, you know how much I love Brene, but go ahead with I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that if you think that there's a high probability that person will actually admit, early and often, right? When they actually have made a false step, man, that gives you the ability to be free. Wow, what a concept, to be in a relationship but still be free, right? That's the biggest fear for most people, is to be in a relationship and not have autonomy and the freedom that, a lot of folks
to be who you are, to
Exactly.
be who you are, to be all of who you are.
Exactly. When I talk to my daughter, Sarah Brown, one of the things that is still a little shocking for her at times, when I say to her, I say, hey, look, I'm trying to give you my thoughts, but I really want to hear what you think about it, because ultimately my job is to give you tools for you to think through things that I haven't thought about, to be able to do a better job in the future. So I don't have all the answers. She's like, Dad, I can't imagine you having better thoughts than me. I said, I'm counting on it. And I'm encouraging you to know that I'm here to help provide a guidance and to be your Sherpa as you climb the mountain. I said, if you ever feel like I'm saying something that's wrong-headed, incomplete, not easy to understand, you have full authority as a human being to tell me, Dad, not sure if I agree with that. She's like, it's just weird to hear someone say that. I'm like, I know it sounds weird. I said, but ultimately I'm thinking about our relationship, hopefully in 30 years, right? That you'll be able to say, thank you for those debates that we used to have, to think about both sides of the equation, and to understand that the fact that we maybe disagree with something doesn't mean that we are in need of being disagreeable. That there's a whole spirit of iron sharpening iron to help us to get better. And for me, to be talking to an 11-year-old and see her brain developing, and for me to be part of that encouragement experience, my bet is that when she gets into the teenage years, that I will have minimized some of the
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the
I've
stuff
heard
that typically comes. So before we go there, I just have to say that I love what you just said and the picture that you just painted. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, we need to teach this, as you said. It's not, we can't just assume. I mean, clearly, when we look at the mess that we're in this country right now, and at the root of it, I believe, well, there's several things that are going on here. The fact that we've never really had the honest conversation about how this country got started, and all of the inequities that have resulted as a part of that. So that's a given, and that's the big elephant that is in the room, and we're finally beginning to talk about that. But in addition to that, there's this inability that we have to relate to each other, as you just said, as human beings. You told Sarah, as a human being, you have the full authority as a human being to your own opinion and to challenge me on mine, but with respect and understanding that each opinion has value and worth, even if we disagree. And so we have to learn how to have those conversations. And, clearly that's not happening in Congress. Clearly that's not happening in a lot of families that are politically divided. It's not happening in our society as a whole. And this is where we have to go, is to help each other learn the skills that you are talking about right now, and what Encouragex is built upon.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said half of what you do is strongly related to how smart you are. So you can get, out of 100 points, you can get 50 possible points on how smart you are. The other half really has a lot to do with how you do it, right? Your approach, your ability to engage, to listen. Comcast is one of our clients. They talk a lot about this active listening skill. And to let people know that you're actually hearing them and playing things back to them, it goes such a long way to put that stake in the ground to say, I hear you. I always love hearing Oprah talk about people want to be seen and they want to be understood. And that's all about the how you do it side of it. And, the other 50 points you can get out of 100, a lot of folks will get, very low scores. They're trying to over-index on the how smart you are. And I just always believe that you've got to have a focus on both of those things. And so to me, even talking to an 11-year-old, to be vulnerable as a dad, to say, you have the right to challenge me. And I think it's interesting in that she's growing up in an environment where she expects this. And so when we were watching TV programs and the parent says, do it because I told you so, Sarah has never heard that. She's never heard that phrase. just shut up and do it because I told you so.
Yeah, I'm the adult and you're the child. I'm paying the bills. You do what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other favorite one for me, that it's a longer story, but I'll just tell you that the one that my dad used to use quite a bit was when I wasn't performing at a level of competency that he expected or capability, he would routinely say that you're not worth a quarter. Ooh. And
oh my God.
I had a hard time understanding, like, what was the intention behind that? And I finally understood that he just didn't have the tool set to know that he could have said, hey, there's an opportunity for us to improve. What can I do to help?
Right, exactly.
And, when I tell that story to my daughter, she's like, gosh, what was he thinking? Right? I can't imagine you telling me that my self-worth was less than a quarter. Right.
Right.
And people just don't understand that when you hold these positions of authority, responsibility, and accountability, everything that you say means something. You cannot
every word
be irresponsible and say things, as we've learned here in the last 4 months, last 4 days, right? I mean, every day is a new experience on people using their words. So I
want to ask you, what are you saying to Sarah? How are you handling, you and your wife, Michelle? How are you handling conversations with her about what happened at the Capitol and what's going on in the country?
Well, it's a great opportunity to do some history lessons of the Brown household. So we're on YouTube a lot. Like every day she comes in for what they call community time, because Sarah's still doing distance learning. And we have 45 minutes every day, kind of and she comes up on her own accord. I'm on the other side of the house working. I can hear the pitter patter up the stairs. I greet her with, hey, Sarah Brown. And she smiles and comes and sits down and says, what are you doing, Dad? And sometimes I'll talk about work. Sometimes she'll just start into conversations, but it always seems to come back to explaining something about why the world is acting the way the world is acting. And I found that just actually going back and showing video of how things used to be, speeches that were done of acceptance, speeches that were done to admit defeat. I said, this is what we would call the normal approach to things. And the fact that people are not hearing the truth, very much like Mitt Romney said, the most important thing is to start with the truth. If we could all just start there, it will be amazing.
If we could just agree on what the facts are. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, share that. I think that it goes a long way. So even when Sarah asked me questions about dating and how you met mommy and how she became here, I don't over-index on telling her things she doesn't need to know. Michelle might disagree with that at times, but I would rather be the first point of information sharing of the truth with her versus someone telling her something that's not true.
Right.
And she finds herself in a situation where she feels like, I wish they would have told me the truth about that situation, so that I don't find myself trying to, or find myself having made a mistake because I didn't have all the data. And I'll just say that, every day she is watching the news, trying to understand why people are doing things. And we'll get, somewhat spatial about kind of what is the end goal of all of this. We use a little mnemonic in our family called a 3 set of 3s. What is the impact of your decision in 3 hours, 3 weeks, and 3 years? And if you can get out metaphorically in 3 years and feel good about what you're getting ready to say or do, you should probably go ahead and do it. But a lot of times I'll say, well, put your 3 set of 3s on it. And she'll say, you know what? 3 minutes from now, I probably won't feel good about it. So I'm training her to think every action has...
What a valuable tool. Has consequences.
Yeah.
Every action has consequences. Yeah.
And sometimes, you get to 3 years, you're like, you know what? I still need to say this, because if I don't, there's going to be consequences to the other side. And just get into that practice of when she does something that isn't quite, worthy of a 21-year-old's decision making because she's 11, I'll say, well, let's use a 3 set of threes. What do you think? She's like, yeah, probably shouldn't have done that. I'm like, hey, look, as long as you're understanding that that's a one you want to file away, let's keep on moving, right? Because I don't believe in physical capital, not capital punishment, but corporal punishment. I don't believe in laying hands on a female or a male, my child especially. I think it sends the wrong message. I don't want her to ever grow up feeling like a man should be able to lay hands on her in a way that's inappropriate. So that starts with me, right? Yeah. It takes more time, but on the long term, it takes a lot less time because I don't have to explain through why I did things to get to control versus, again, what my job is to be a guide. And I'm finding that, again, by explaining through and encouraging her to get her own method of taking trips into the future and thinking about the implications of her action, it takes on a natural rhythm to it that, we'll ask her like, hey, why'd you do that? She said, well, I used my 3 set of threes, decided. And I'm like, oh my God, like what a gift, right? To do the work.
I think that is such a powerful tool. And I'm thinking about it now in a business, in a corporate context. I mean, it applies to any decision that you might make. And so I know a lot of people who might be watching or listening, are in corporate America. And you mentioned that Comcast is a client and that you're doing a lot of, B2B work. So what have been some of the experiences that have been expressed to you as a result of I guess using the Encouragex platform between employer, employee, and vice, as the communication goes both ways. Yeah. How is it working? How is it helping, if it is?
Yeah, I think the one that really spikes in my mind, and I can't share all the names of some of the companies because they have a white label offering, but suffice it to say that 3 of the top 10 technology firms in the world are now using Encouragex, which 2 of those came on the last 4 weeks as we started getting involved in all this civil unrest. They were just like, what do we do? The one that really, again, spikes in my mind is just having this conversation with African Americans about showing up at meetings. Everyone's looking around the room and see not only one elephant in the room, but like 3 big, fat, elephants in the room. And we actually have done a little kind of a 14-week encouragement story now on one of the managers happens to be a white female, 45 years old, with a 30-year-old project manager, and the 8 encouragements that she sent to her colleagues, 15 years her junior, to not only let her know that she sort of understands what she might be thinking about, but delivering words and phrases, a few gifts, and also using some of the questions that were recommended as she put in information about her colleague, and you let the algorithm help to refine some of the recommendations. That the outcome of this has been, in this particular case, transformational. The relationship has gone from very transactional, it's kind of a member of a team, to a person I wouldn't say is her BFF, but clearly a person that she sees, the 30-year-old, as much more of a confidant, someone who understands the situation. I mean, let's face it, when you get a quote from a 45-year-old woman from Oregon to a woman who grew up in Atlanta, and it's actually, quoting someone from Atlanta who understands the civil rights movement, when that's being delivered in a personal message that clearly understand, it's like, how could this person possibly know that that's exactly what I need to hear right now? Right. Transformational, right?
Right.
Transformational. When she received a bottle of wine that is from the Black Girl Magic wine line that was a recommendation. A woman enjoys wine, but she actually sent the wine from Black Girl Magic. I'm trying to remember the women that started this company, but anyway, it was one of the recommendations. So it's really just kind of dialing in on what it is that person might really appreciate to say. I see you, I hear you, and I actually want to just be super intentional with. I know this is hard.
The when you mentioned the words and phrases of people not really knowing what to say, I've done so many interviews recently, as you say, in the wake of all of the civil unrest and, George Floyd and all of the others. And one particular interview is coming to mind right now, and it's one that I did with an author who wrote a book called Dear White Christian, and he's in the St. Louis area. It's still posted on the website, or, go to iTunes or wherever you can still, get the podcast. But basically he wrote the book in the wake of Michael Brown and Ferguson and the riots that happened in Ferguson, just outside of St. Louis. I think it was 2015. And the reason that he wrote it is because he had had a conversation with some of his white friends, and he just, after everything that was going on, the riots every night, and finally he said to one of his close white friends, he said, I don't understand. Do you not see what's going on? Why aren't you talking to me about this? Why aren't you expressing something? I mean, it was just like oblivious. There was like nothing happening. And he said, don't you care? And his white friend said to him, he said, yes, of course we care. He said, we just don't know what to say. And we just don't know what to do. We don't want to make it worse. We don't completely understand. But it's mainly we just don't know what to say or do. And he said, okay, I can deal with that. And then he wrote the book trying to help them understand, what the framework is, and then how they might start to have these conversations. And so what you're doing with the platform of Encouragex is, providing any number of life events that are situations that people might find themselves in, and then giving them the language that they might use in that situation. And in a corporate setting, with all of the conversations that are happening now around diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's got to be like a gold mine in terms of the content that some of your clients are now able to access.
Well, imagine this for a second, Linda. One of my colleagues from the CMO Club called me one day and said, hey, I really don't know as much about this as I would like to. What can you do to help me? And so I sent him a couple of the open platform pages about understanding racism, someone that's going through, how to encourage someone who's going through that. And there were a few questions that were associated with that life event to help people actually ask the right question. Instead of just saying anything, like start with a question. And so the next day I got a phone call from the same person. I got a couple questions. He said, my first question is, James, do you like to be called Black, African American? I'm just curious. Do you have a preference? And I was just so touched that he actually cared enough to ask seemingly a fairly innocuous question. But it meant everything to say, that is such a transparent, reasonable question to say, I don't know. Let me ask you what you prefer.
Right.
And then the follow-up was, is that universal or are people different? And so all of a sudden we had this really conversation.
And the answer is people are different. People are different.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a conversation as we're starting to build out the Latinx collection. I was talking to a person that's president of a hospital, and I said, so I'm just curious, what are some of the issues that you see are important to encourage people that happen to be Latin? And so she went through this whole thing about describing a coconut is kind of a term that sometimes is said to Latin professionals. I'm like, coconut. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
And she went into this whole thing about a coconut is kind of brown on the outside, and then on the inside it's white.
It's white. Oh my God.
And so I thought, okay,
really?
Oreo. Yeah, so I thought Oreo.
Yeah, that's our version of Oreo. Okay.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, not familiar with that. And she's like, sometimes, she's like, with my parents who really don't speak any English, I'm actually engaging in corporate America as a Hispanic that sometimes people don't even recognize me as Hispanic, and they're saying crazy things about Mexicans, and I happen to be Mexican. I'm trying to maintain that corporate persona. I'm also, when I have my parents over, I'm speaking nothing but Spanish. She also happens to be married to someone who is Asian and happens to be, I think, Southeast Asian. So their faith is Muslim. So she's got Christianity, Muslim faith. You got all of these different things flowing in, and she's trying to have the capacity to be authentic in both.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, my goodness, it's so similar, but so different. Because everyone is going through something. It's just different stuff. Yeah. And I mentioned the coconut thing because I'm not familiar with that. And so she wasn't.
First time I've ever heard that.
Yeah. She wasn't familiar with the Oreo thing. Like, I've been called Oreo. I've been called Jiffy Pop. The Jiffy Pop thing was really interesting. Like, you're not real.
Jiffy Pop?
Yeah. Yeah. This was in college at Notre Dame. A girl, Tony, called me Jiffy Pop. She said, yeah, you're not really black. You don't sit in the black section all the time. So she called me Jiffy Pop. That was my nickname.
Oh my God.
And so all those things, right, are now flowing into all these collections. We're actually developing a collection for African Americans called North Star, which will be launching next week. And the cool thing about it is, after talking to some of my white colleagues, they said, really love what you're doing with the North Star. She said, but can you please add a whole section for white people to understand what they can do to encourage Black people? Because originally it was more like, this is for, encouragement essentials for African Americans. She said, can you add a section with the same mindset? If I happen to be white, what are the things I can do to encourage? And I thought, well, that makes complete sense. And so we've taken that on all of the approaches to say, it's not just for those people to use.
Yeah. And so it just strikes a chord with me, because I've been doing some working with companies to have conversations about race. Okay. And so the first conversation, depending on a whole bunch of things, can, be a little dicey. You never know how people are going to come out of it. But in this particular case, it went extremely well. And then the next thing was, okay, we want to talk now about how to be an ally. Yeah. And so that kind of dovetails with what you were just saying. So for white people who want to know how to encourage a person of color, a Black person or another person of color, and then also what they should and should not do or can and cannot do to be an ally and help advance the cause of equality and making sure that everybody has an opportunity at the same things. And there's certain things that you should and should not do in that situation.
So exactly. And so, because of my background in, I guess, marketing as well as high school speech and debate, I grew up learning about seeing both sides of the equation. And so we're actually now creating a whole category on how to encourage white people if you're not white, related to the same type of issues. So if I learned recently from a friend of mine, it's like, I feel like when people look at me, they're trying to decide, am I with all of this noise and activity, or am I not with that? And so I've tried to be contrarian about it and say, so if I'm African-American, I want to encourage a friend of mine that, let's just say, has been a lifelong Republican, and they're trying to figure out how do they, now explain themselves. I don't want to make them feel like they are going through some type of qualification process now as my friend. I want them to know, look, that doesn't have to be a part of it, but I want to be able to encourage them so they can be an ally, right? Maybe I can reach out and be a leader and say, hey, I want to talk to you and make sure that you understand. I understand this has got to be hard for you as well, which I think would be as shocking as someone asking me, do I like to be called African-American or Black? For me to actually reach out and say, hey, how are you dealing with all this? Like, is it, how's it making you feel? And so what's amazing to me is as we're starting to build out some of these issues, and by the way, Microsoft, really impressive what they're doing in the allyship area. And the amazing approach for them is they want to empower everyone to do more, is kind of what a lot of this is coming from. And by being an ally, you're able to not only understand what folks are going through, but also provide tools that they can now practice. And that's where Encouragex comes in, right? To have them, once they have the big conversation, we consider ourselves to be the second or third member of a relay team, to grab onto the baton after you are aware of the conversation. We want you to be able to grab onto the baton and then take off without breaking stride, to then start practicing some of these things, letting people know, look, not only did I go to the training, but I'm doing things to let you know I am an ally. I'm here for you, and to be consistent in sharing that message, because a lot of times people will go to the training, they'll get their certificate, right? But there's no way to evidence that new mindset or that insight is now being practiced. And I have to tell you, going to high school in Missouri, clearly some of the more formative, years in my life, the thing I never forgot, and I think we're really practicing, is the idea of the show me state. Like, it's one thing to talk, but if you really want to impress me,
show me, baby. Show me the money.
You know about this as well after, going to J school in Missouri and Columbia. And I think that's a big part of why there's so much emphasis on even the user experience that we're starting to refine now, that people are able to not only send encouragement, but now on platform, as an encourager and a recipient of encouragement, both people are able to send and receive encouragement and be able to, for the first time, from my perspective, be able to go back to something that you sent to someone to encourage and update it, right? And continue to add layers to understanding about something to let that person know, I'm still thinking about you.
I'm still thinking about you. Yeah,
this is not the one and done.
And by the way, just so our audience knows, you can send these either by text message or by email. So you decide. Some people don't like email, some people don't like text, so you can tailor it for the person that's going to be receiving it so that they're receiving it in the way that is best for them. So,
and the third part of this that we're excited about should be launching next week. I call it the magic button, because once you click this button, it actually sends it and allows you to kind of have your on platform one-to-one little oasis, right? An oasis in the cloud, essentially, of where you can go and know that everything that's in this relationship profile between you and one other person is all about encouraging each other. And there's kind of a record of, look, we've been there for one another. And this is outside of your grocery list. This is outside of, can you make sure that you don't forget to, do your chores tonight? All that stuff. Great places for that on, iMessage, and social media is great for, like, if you want to, like, brand and personally promote yourself. This is about that one-to-one thing. There are some things people just don't really need to hear about, right? This should be the one-on-one experience. Right. I have to tell you a little funny story if I can, Linda. I can remember when Michelle and I got pregnant with Sarah. And I guess there had been a family tradition in the Riley side of the family that the mother-in-law was actually in the birthing room during the birth. And I really wasn't actually.
You weren't up for that, huh?
I wasn't really feeling that, honestly. And it just makes you think about traditions that people have. Yeah. You want to, new member to the family. You want to be respectful of all that, but you're also trying to create some of your own experiences. And
sure,
my little funny thought, or my mother-in-law, who I love dearly, she finally understood 6 months after she was not happy about the fact that I said, would you mind on, seeing the baby after we came out of the delivery room? I kind of said, I think that's really a special time for the people that were there when she was conceived should be there when she comes out. And it should just be about those two people, honestly.
Just be us.
Yeah. So
just be us.
Exactly. And so it just makes me think about, there are some things where it really is just about, a one-to-one experience. And I use that as an extreme example, of course, but right. What I tell my wife, what I tell my daughter, I want to make sure that is a very personal experience. What I do with members of our team, there are things that are all about me just letting them know, hey, I believe in you. All about promotion and recognition and all that. I think that's great. But man, there's no substitute to me to have one person taking time and focus and saying, I'm being intentional about helping you, being there for you, to let you know that no matter what happens, I got your back. And our platform isn't a platform where you're counting how many followers you have. You're not going to have 1,500 people in your relationship profile. You're probably going to have somewhere between 5, 10, 15. I think 50 probably is on the higher end conceptually. Robin Dunbar has something called Dunbar's number, where most human beings can't manage more than 150 relationships in a real way at any one point in time. I think our platform is really for more of the 5 to 50 on the high end. But those are the people
but in meaningful, consistent, and authentic ways, and that's the difference. So I have to say, as we wrap up, that I feel so much better now than I did when we started.
Oh, good.
This has lifted my spirits as I knew it would. Just talking with you and hearing the stories of how the platform is touching people's lives in multiple ways, and it's the boost that I needed, and so thank you for that, and really just for having the vision to create something that the world truly needs at this moment. Yeah. I mean, truly needs at this moment. So much of what's going on, I think, is just people not feeling seen and heard and valued and understood and just important, feeling as though their existence means something as a human being who is gracing this earth.
Right.
And we have to find ways to encourage each other.
I think you're absolutely right. And you and I've talked a lot about this idea of being human is something that we need to continue to have dialogue about, that the ability to have consciousness and control yourself and your thoughts is something that we all need to be more mindful of, that we have the ability to choose how we act, what we say. This whole idea of being intentional about our actions, I think, is probably the most important thing. That the person that shared with me that they felt like Encouragex was helping them to save their marriage was that, gosh, I actually can, be kind, be more kind to someone that I know that person cares for me. But if I'm not actually demonstrating that, it's easy to start wondering, I wonder if they really care about me anymore.
Right. So what you're doing is helping people unlock their kindness.
Yes.
So they can encourage strong and then level up their relationships.
All day. Even if they need to have Sierra in the background singing Level Up, I'd be happy to partner with Sierra someday as well. She has her own style, clearly.
You hear, Sierra, you hear that? Are you out there listening? Are you out there watching? I love it. James, it's been a pleasure as always, and I'm so excited for where the company is going and just the impact that it's having on human lives. So thank you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, Wanda. I think it's going to be a great year.
From your lips to God's ears. Okay.
Amen.
It is going to be a great year. We speak it into existence.
Absolutely.
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
We do. All right. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed talking with James about Encouragex and all the exciting things that are happening on the platform right now. As always, you can find links to what we're talking about in the show notes. So I hope that you will remember what we talked about with him, the whole idea of unlocking your kindness so that you can encourage strong in order to level up your relationships. And as you do that, I also invite you to remember to please give each other permission to speak and to have the courage to listen with an open mind. We'll see you next time.